in the last 75 years, there's been a massive decline in sperm. If that decline keeps going, in less than 15 years, we have a mass epidemic where most men will have no sperm.
What are some of the myths about male fertility that kind of frustrate you?
I think the biggest one is just that fertility is not a male issue, reinforced by this idea that men are fertile forever, which is not true. The other myth that comes up a lot for me is,
how about stress and diet? How do they negatively impact our kind of sperm quality and sperm counts?
the male physiology is a little bit more resilient to stress than the female physiology. The biggest factor that affects everything across the board is the exposure to. We're seeing a situation that we should really be looking at and saying, hey, this is a men's health crisis.
Okay, listeners, back for another episode on a topic that actually is, I feel, is so underspoken about in the realms of men, because, and we'll probably get into this, it's something that men really struggle to talk about amongst themselves, first of all, and there's actually not a huge amount of conversation publicly about it. You know, we're going to talk about male fertility today, and ultimately when we think about fertility, there is this assumption almost always, if there is some sort of fertility struggles, which I've seen with friends and family members, that we just kind of look at the woman. We just assume that the woman, there's something going on there, and women often take that responsibility and feel that shame. And I know that we're going to get to the bottom of this to see that that isn't always the case, and there's a much wider picture, and there's a lot of myths that men hold and a lot of things that we really need to look at. And today I have with me a wonderful doctor, a holistic doctor, really looks at fertility and all aspects of it, not just the medical, give you some pills and have a little operation and on your way, but actually looking at the whole human. And today I have with me Dr. Aumatma Simmons. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm very excited to talk about this because I do think that it's not talked about enough, as you said in your intro. And male fertility is actually 49% of the equation, statistically speaking. So it's not that women are always the problem. And I think that we somewhere have forgotten this or have created the myth that it's always the women. And I think that too many doctors actually reinforce that myth by not testing men early enough, assuming that it's the female, assuming that it's our age, when in fact, that's barely the surface level, right? So I'm grateful that you're open to having this conversation because I think it's very important for men to hear it.
Yeah, wonderful. So, doctor, first question I got here, you kind of stole on a little bit there, but I'm going to plow through with the questions. I think it's a question. What are some of the myths about male fertility that kind of frustrate you, and why do you think they persist?
I think the biggest one is just that fertility is not a male issue, right? And I think that it persists in several ways. I think patriarchal cultures have tended to assume that it's never the male. It's reinforced by this idea that men are fertile forever, which is not true. There is a real thing called andropause that happens in a majority of men around the same time as menopause. So theoretically, like, you are not fertile forever, and your male fertility, not you specifically, but male fertility in general, is declining with age as much as female fertility is. So there's actually a lot of relevance and coherence within fertility in general, male and female. But we've somehow isolated the men out of this process. And a lot of them that we work with will tell us, oh, I was told that it's not me. I'm just the sperm donor. Like, I don't need to do anything. And they actually feel annoyed and left out of the process, which like is frustrating for them because they're like, I want to show up. I want to have this baby. I want to create a family. And the doctor's like, yeah, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you need to do. It's not you. And we're taking care of it with IVF, IUI, whatever it is that they're choosing. So I think those are the biggest ones. And then I think once you get into the IVF world, it's because IVF and IUI both kind of adapt for male fertility issues on the surface. So IUI is intrauterine insemination. It's basically where the sperm get ejected into the cervix, and they get a little push along the journey, so they're going to get further along and hopefully reach the egg sooner. So this will often adapt for motility issues. That's one factor of sperm health. The IVF, on the other hand, will adapt for motility and morphology issues. So when you go to a reproductive endocrinologist who specializes in doing IVF, their thought is, well, you don't need amazing sperm because we already know that our technology adapts for it. You don't need great sperm if we're selecting the sperm and we're putting them right next to the egg in the petri dish. They're going to know where to go because there isn't a lot to travel. So they don't need to move very well, and they don't need to have great morphology because we've bypassed the need for survival of the fittest in the female body. And that assumption is true if you want to go down the IVF route. But the problem comes in when a doctor is doing the assessment saying, hey, your fertility is fine, your sperm are awesome. But the couple is not necessarily wanting to get IVF. So they're not really evaluating from the place of, can you actually do this in a natural environment without needing the technology? Is that an option for you? And a lot of times that answer would be no, if they were asking a different question, right? Or if they were going to someone like myself who doesn't do any IVF, and it's not that we're against it, but it's not our way right out of the gate. So when people come to us, we're looking at very different markers, and we're saying, in a natural environment, this will never happen, right? If your morphology is low, if your motility is low, unfortunately, like that sperm is never going to fertilize an egg in a natural environment, which to me, I feel like that should be a red flag, right? If you can't do it in a natural environment, it means the health of your sperm is not actually good. And I want to make sure that the sperm are the healthiest possible, regardless of whether you're going natural or IVF. But unfortunately, that opposite assessment is not true. So a lot of men are hearing these messages and assuming that, oh, my doctor said my sperm is fine, so I don't need to worry about it. We're going to keep trying. And I'm like, well, you're wasting your time because the sperm is not great for natural. It could work for IVF, but it's not good for natural. And they're like, wait, what? Like, why am I hearing this for the first time, right? Like, why didn't anybody tell me? And I'm like, well, they're just evaluating it very differently. And for them, it doesn't really make sense or fit in any way. So they're telling you what they know from their window of belief. The other myth that I think comes up a lot for me is the myth that if your sperm are good, everything is good. And there's a little bit of a differentiation there because there's a lot of research that says if the man has blood sugar issues, methylation is this process in the body that affects essentially everything that happens. So it's nutrient absorption, it's the making of hormones, making of neurotransmitters, it's impacting every function in our body. And if those two, blood sugar and methylation, if those two are out of whack, either of those, the likelihood that the man is going to have a female partner that miscarries frequently is going to go way up. So research actually shows that it doesn't matter what the sperm are doing. If he has these underlying health things, he is going to have a partner that has pregnancy losses. So now we bring in the idea that, oh, well, the female's carrying the baby, so if there's a loss, it's on her. No, it's not actually. And so much of that is determined by the male partner. It really questions everything that we have been telling couples and like, oh, you're fine, nothing having to do with you. When in fact, his health matters. I feel like almost matters more than the female health, because so much of that genetic material that the baby will have, the health of the placenta, which is the feeding organism for the baby, is going to be determined by the male physiology and male status of health. So we can actually help women have less symptoms during pregnancy, have healthier pregnancies, healthier babies, all by supporting the male partner, which sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of this, there's so many things you said there I want to jump on, right? But it just sounds like it's one of the, I've just recently read a book. I read a manuscript of a book that I've got to do an endorsement for. And one of the things that seems really interesting in there is like around health and health systems in the world, and how many of these health systems don't really look into a lot of men's health issues very well. Like there's just like an understanding of so many of these health issues. And one of them was fertility that was talking about in there, which I find really fascinating because you wouldn't think it would be that way.
Yeah. We don't expect it to be that way because it's a little bit of a weird situation, because a lot of health, quote unquote, that is research and scientifically driven is only being tested on men. So there's this discrepancy between what we're testing on women. And a lot of times the excuse is, well, women are just smaller men and everything is the same. The physiology is the same. So we're just going to test it on men because they don't have cycles. And cycles like confuse researchers to the nth degree, right? So they're like, let's just simplify this. Men have lesser degrees of variance in a day-to-day way. So we're going to be able to track things better. Similarly, we have data from male fertility that is showing that in the last 75 years, there's been a massive decline in sperm. And statistically, if that decline keeps going at the rate that it's been, then in less than 15 years, we have a mass epidemic where most men will have no sperm left. And that's not going to be true for everyone, but statistically speaking, that's what it's saying. So we have this kind of scenario where there's a lot of actual data on men's health, but we're not doing anything about it. And we're saying, oh, men are good, men are good, men are good, men are healthy. They don't need anything. But I feel like it's actually the flip. Like there's so much that is being flagged as, hey, there's a male, like we should be getting our flags up because men's health is on a decline. Men's mental health is on a decline. Testosterone levels are the lowest they've ever been across the world. We see 18 to 25-year-olds, which is really like peak male testosterone levels, are at their lowest.
Wow.
Right? So we're seeing a situation that we should really be looking at and saying, hey, this is a men's health crisis right now. And yet we're taking all of this research and saying, men are okay. Let's make all these medications to drive women's health based on male assumptions that were the actual subjects in the studies, and extrapolate that information and apply it to women that don't need more medicalization, don't need more medications, don't even have the research to back it up, because the stuff that's happening in a male body is very different from a female body. And you can't translate that information across genders. So I feel like it's a little bit complex in the way that science is approaching health in general. And we're missing the mark in so many ways for both sides.
Got it. So what I'm hearing you say there is like the science has been poorly researched, but it's fine having good findings. And then those findings are then taken and to some degree politicized a little bit. And then the actions on that information has to filter through our kind of social lens, of like, oh, we couldn't just put out loads of information about how men's health and ignore women, but we can talk about women's health because, you know, we've ignored that for so many decades. So we'll put out all the information, but there's a massive disconnect between the kind of science and what the science is actually saying, the research is saying, and what we're actually leading to kind of information and changes within kind of our health systems around men and their health. So there was, I got a couple of stats, right? Because then you mentioned some of those, like there's a kind of meta-analysis, right? It's gone on from like 73 to 2011. And it's shown that in the Western world, like sperm counts have declined by 50 to 60%, right? An average of 1.4 point year. And as you said, it's expected to continue in that way, right? Like even in the UK alone, male fertility issues have doubled, right? Between 2004 and 2017, male factors, you know, contributing to infertility are now around 30%, and this is all in the UK. And it's thought that 1% of British men are producing no sperm at all, right? And this is, you know, this is super serious stuff, right? And I guess the question I have is, you were talking about mobility and morphology, and this I just want to get these terms right. So mobility feels quite clear, like how well they move and swim. I'm guessing that's what it is, right? Yeah. Morphology. What's morphology of sperm?
Morphology is the quality of the sperm, and what they're really looking at is the head and the tail of the sperm. So they're looking to see, are the heads normal? And the head is very important because that is what has the enzyme that will penetrate through the protective barrier on the egg. So like our fertility is really designed for survival of the fittest, right? Like nature wanted to ensure that we would have the healthiest children possible. And the way that it did that was every sperm is fighting for survival to fertilize an egg. So when you have sperm that are no longer able to fight that fight, that's where you're going to see the morphology issues. They have weird heads, they have weird tails, they're missing tails, they're missing heads, their heads are like all wonky, or they're double-headed or whatever, right? Like any variation is not a good one. And then there's actually another factor that a lot of reproductive endocrinologists are not looking at, which is called DNA fragmentation. And that's how healthy is the DNA on that sperm. And essentially the head, where it meets the tail, there's like the first little bit of the first third of the tail is basically the DNA. So if this DNA is fragmented, it basically means there's more mutations than should be present on the DNA of the sperm, which is then going to increase DNA abnormalities in the embryo, which is then going to trigger potential pregnancy losses, potential health outcomes for the baby. And essentially, like DNA fragmentation rates when they're high is going to be a high rate of pregnancy loss. So that's the third factor that can be tested on sperm that isn't being tested very often. And they're kind of like expensive tests to do. So a lot of endocrinologists are like, you don't need it. Your sperm is fine. Only if you have low morphology, we'll test your DNA. And it's like, well, you could have DNA fragmentation issues without the morphology issues. So they're not always interrelated. And I've seen where you can have perfect looking sperm, but the DNA is super fragmented, or the sperm are great, but his physiology is not going well. He's got prediabetes, whatever. So there are these factors that don't show up in the sperm that are still able to impact male fertility and fertility outcomes for that couple.
Got it. So there's mobility, morphology, DNA fragmentation. Obviously, sperm count is one that we know a lot of, like people talk about kind of sperm count.
And that's the one we know the most about.
Yeah, I guess that's the easiest one to kind of test for, right? You put a little bit of sperm under the microscope and you're like, there's loads of them there. You know, sort of thing. Some sort of counting, right? So I guess the question is, do different factors affect negatively those different aspects, from like the morphology, the mobility, the DNA, and the count?
Yes and no. So there is, I think the biggest overlap or the biggest factor that affects everything across the board is the exposure to toxins. And that's where there's a ton of research on the male fertility side that says that, hey, this reproductive toxin is going to have a negative effect on motility, morphology, and count. Some of them only affect morphology. Some of them affect motility more. So there's a lot of different research that says, hey, this specific toxin, let's say phthalates, for example, which are basically like all the things that are present in fragrances. So all the stuff that smells good is really high reproductive toxin.
So that's stuff like cologne, those plug-in
air fresheners,
incense.
Incense, depending on what fragrance they use. So if it's like those incense that are dipped, then absolutely. If it's actual like herbs that they rolled, then maybe less so. I still wouldn't use it, but because it's just hard to tell, right? Like you don't know what they're using. So it's really all of the stuff that you think is making you or your home or your car smell good is likely to have fragrance and is a big no for fertility because the phthalates have a huge impact on sperm.
Wow. So everyone is just sniffing this stuff in, right? Unconsciously, because I go into homes, you smell it, you go into any shop, you go into a supermarket, like everyone is spraying stuff into the air to keep you in there and make it smell good. And all of these things contain various toxins that are affecting our fertility.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the biggest one for guys is like, take the things out, the air fresheners that you're hanging in your car, just get them out. Please stop using them.
The magic tree.
Yes, the magic tree.
Is it they're called the magic tree, right? I think that's the brand.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It's been a very long time since I've seen one of them, but I think you're right. So that kind of stuff, or like laundry detergent that you're like, oh, I want my clothes to smell good. That's going to have an effect. So those phthalates are probably the biggest reproductive toxin for men. And then the other one is bisphenol compounds that your listeners have probably heard about a million times. It's all the stuff in plastic. So it's going to be your plastic water bottles, your plastic food storage containers, your takeout containers, coffee cups, even the lining of aluminum cans for food are going to have plastic. So you really have to move towards a full avoidance of plastic because the feedback loop with both of these do the same. They mimic estrogens, which is obviously not great for men. It increases what looks like estrogen in the body, which feedback loops to the brain, and the brain goes, oh, too much estrogen, we need to stop making testosterone, which has a hit on testosterone, which then affects sperm production. So it's a weird loop in the brain because testosterone is the goal hormone for men. But testosterone, when there's a lot of it, will overconvert to estrogen. So estrogen is the negative feedback loop to the brain that says, hey, shut this down. Too much testosterone happening. Unfortunately, when you have these estrogen mimicking compounds, that signal is happening without testosterone being present, which is why we're seeing that massive decline in testosterone, which I don't know if this is true in the UK, but in the US where we are, there's a testosterone clinic on every corner. Like you can walk into one of these clinics and get T-shots out the wazoo.
T-shots. Wow.
T-shots. It's like the most popular thing right now. Wow. And men think that they need it because their testosterone is low, their libido is low. The problem with testosterone shots is if you get external testosterone, meaning it's coming from outside of your own body, it's a negative feedback loop for the sperm. So it's like an actual like detriment to fertility. It shuts it off. versus when your body's making it on its own, it's supporting the production of sperm. So it's like a double hit if you are trying to get pregnant, or if you, and we see these guys a lot who started T-shots early in their young adulthood in their 20s. They're like, oh yeah, I was lifting and I wanted more testosterone and build muscle and all that. And we'll see them in their 30s and 40s with very low sperm, like almost non-existent. And those are really tough cases because their brain has gotten that signal for so long that in order to recover that signal and to recover the body's ability to make its own testosterone, it's going to take a very long time to reverse it. And unfortunately, a lot of them are coming while their partner is in their 40s already. And we're like, well, she's going to run out of time before we're able to support your testosterone and your sperm to come back online. So the best option is a sperm donor. Like at that point, there's nothing to work around. Like we can try for a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, listen, guys, like sperm is not coming back. Yeah. It's time to move to the next step.
Wow.
And it's unfortunate because a lot of them will say, oh, the doctor never told me that this was going to affect my fertility. And I was like, yeah, that sucks.
Did the doctor know when they were prescribing the
Oh, absolutely. They should know, and it should be disclosed that T-shots will negatively affect sperm. But a lot of them don't disclose it because essentially their source of income is T-shots. Like that's all they do. So they're like, the more people we have, the better. And men get hooked on it, right? Like you get a shot once. It's not a one-time thing. You have to keep going back. You got to go back like once a week, twice a week, depending on what your dosage is. So they've got them hooked for endless amounts of testosterone for years. And if you stop, your testosterone drops so drastically that you're going to feel like shit.
Yeah.
So most men won't do it. Once you're on it, you're on it. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you're sold for life because you will feel like garbage if you try to get off of it without support.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like, I feel like it's a little sketchy industry where
feels like
they're
drug
not
dealing.
Yeah, a little bit, right? Like you'll feel amazing. You'll have all the energy in the world. Like you can just see it. It's a good sales pitch.
Wow, it's like legal drug dealing. It just reminds me. There's Netflix dramatization of the around Oxy. And you're like, oh my God, how has this happened? And, I saw some dramatizations on Netflix, and I kind of read about this epidemic, what was happening I read about this over 10 years ago. And I was like, they were showing cues, and you're like, this could be the thing that's happening to men, because in the UK, what we have here is a few organizations, online ones, and I'm not going to mention them, they'll do a blood test for you. Right? Hey, come get your bloods done. You should get your bloods done. And then they tell you your testosterone is low. Here's our testosterone products, right? Which is basically a tablet or some sort of thing that you take. And I actually spoke to another doctor. He's a sexual health doctor, and he talks about testosterone and how a lot of these things, these men don't need this, but this company's just making money off it. And then they're getting the media that's talking about low testosterone and how that affects fertility, and they're pushing it on men. And actually, what I'm hearing you say is all these drugs are actually negatively impacting men's not testosterone, their ability to maybe conceive later in the future.
Yes. Yeah. And the amount of time that you're taking the testosterone is going to have a huge impact. So for someone who's been taking it for 10 years, I can almost guarantee that it's going to take at least 2 to 3 years to recover it. So if your partner doesn't have that time, then we're in a loop that we can't help with. For shorter periods of time, maybe shorter amounts of recovery. But it's frustrating because the assumption is that testosterone will support sperm. Yet it is the best form of male birth control out there. Guaranteed. Like if you take testosterone in any form, you are on birth control. You don't need to worry about getting anybody pregnant. It's never going to happen. So that is insane, right? Like we should know, and like just 3 days ago, there was an announcement for male birth control.
Yeah.
People are so excited about it. I'm like, really? Do we need male birth control? Like, what is it going to do to their hormones, their health, mental health? Like, we already have an issue with female birth control being a problem. Now we've got male birth control, and testosterone is already birth control. So what did they do that's different?
Yeah. Is it just testosterone tablets they give you?
Right. Yeah. In the form of birth control.
Yeah. Okay, so we know now this testosterone is terrible and these various toxins are really bad as well. How about stress and diet? Like how does because I know, we know, I want to say we commonly know about smoking and drinking. Like those are the things that your doctor said to you. You need to stop smoking, you need to stop drinking, you need to stop doing drugs. Like we know those sorts of things. Like basically all doctors are constantly telling everyone, stop drinking, stop smoking as much as you do, because it's generally bad for your health and it's also bad for your sperm as well. How about stress and diet? How do they negatively impact our kind of sperm quality and sperm counts?
Stress is an interesting one because the male physiology is a little bit more resilient to stress than the female physiology. So we don't see as many men with stress or what we'd call like cortisol dysregulation. So cortisol is the main hormone in our body. We should have a release of cortisol every morning. It peaks midday and then it declines through the day. And we will suggest testing men when they are showing all the signs of stress. We're like, hey, we should probably test your cortisol and see what's happening. And what we find is that they are either relatively well regulated, or when they are actually reporting stress, their cortisol is overproducing. So they're not at a flat line where they don't have any cortisol. And generally speaking, it's very general, their reserves are going to be better. So their body actually is like, oh, stress, I'm going to push out more cortisol. So it's an upregulation problem rather than a downregulation problem. And that upregulation kind of keeps them in fight or flight. Yeah. What happens with stress is that when there's this overproduction of cortisol, the body is shifted all of its resources in producing cortisol. The biggest hit that takes is not producing testosterone. So all of the body's resources that would go into making testosterone now get diverted into making cortisol. So like men can usually handle stress better, but the response to stress is the problem. So the way that their body regulates is push out more cortisol. The problem with that is, now we don't have enough testosterone. And if we don't have that naturally producing testosterone, which is the key, it's not how do I replace testosterone from what pill, drug, whatever. It's how do I get my body to produce testosterone again? And what we will do is we shift like, hey, your body's in super cortisol production mode. How do we get this to come down a notch? How do we slow down the cortisol production? Because when that happens, your body will naturally divert back to making testosterone. So when they're having symptoms of low sex drive, fatigue, lack of motivation, those are all low testosterone symptoms. If you are experiencing those, the key is how do you stop your body from making too much cortisol and like shifting all of its energy into making cortisol so that you can make testosterone. It's not, oh, my body doesn't know how to make testosterone. Your body knows. The male physiology is designed for testosterone production. So if it's not happening, then the question is not what can I take? It's more what can I do to get it to do what it's designed to do.
Mm. So this is like men are stuck in kind of fight or flight.
Yes.
And their body isn't kind of regulating, coming back down into, what would we say, like a parasympathetic state on a regular basis. So it's not allowing the body then to create that testosterone because everything's going towards the production of cortisol.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. exactly. And then the other thing that will throw this off is when men are stressed, if it's coming from like work or, oh, I have too much to do, I need to get shit done. We have one of these guys right now. He sleeps like 3 hours a night. He's a C-suite executive at a really big company here. And he basically is like, I don't have support. I have to do this. I have to get all the work done. And that means I get 3 hours of sleep. And I'm like, in that state, there's no way your body, not only is it not making testosterone, it's not letting you make any sperm. Because if you're surviving on 3 hours of sleep, your body doesn't get enough of that rejuvenation response that, again, it needs in your body making it, not external melatonin. Your body needs to make this hormone on its own to support rejuvenation. And the rejuvenation that happens with melatonin production internally is to our reproductive organs first. So if we're cutting off the sleep, if we're like, if the adaptation response is, well, I'm just going to spend more time awake to deal with all the stuff that I have to do, then the first hit that your body takes is to the reproductive system, because now it's no longer getting that like reinforcement of time to rejuvenate, and that's supporting reproduction. So yeah, it's a very unfortunate scenario. And we're like, dude, just 2 more hours. Let's get you to 5 hours, right? Like if we could just shift it a little bit, we might be able to get a different response. And he's like, I just can't do it. I have too much work. And it's heart-wrenching for me to watch, because I'm like, gosh, if we could get just a couple hours extra and get you out of this like fight or flight mode, your body has the potential. It has the building blocks. There's nothing like majorly wrong, quote unquote, but it's this like very subtle thing that he's been doing for years. It's got him to where he is in his career. It's got him to where he feels like he wants to be. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But just think about like, where do you have time for your child? You know, you're working like 21 hours a day. Where is there time for you to have a child? So they really want to have the child. And simultaneously, I'm like, well, I don't really see this happening. Like, you guys are really not making the shifts that would support reproduction, and your body's giving you that feedback. So it's showing it in the ways of, oh, we have like little low testosterone. Sperm are not as good as they should be. And they're like, well, we can just go do IVF. And I'm like, you could. And they tried it. They've tried it 3 times now, and it does not work, because there's no, like, even that amount of technology can't overcome the fact that the body is giving all of these signals to not reproduce.
Got it. So this particular person, he's dealing with kind of mobility issues or morphology issues, or just sperm count issues.
He's got morphology and some like low motility. His count is actually fine. But the quality is suffering.
Wow, because of the lack of sleep and a lack of rest and a lack of just being able to relax and be.
Yeah.
Wow. And I imagine this is quite common. Like, you know, we see in this world now, a lot of people are really, really, really fucking stressed all the time. And even if it's just not just work stress, right? Because we also get the stress that we get from, you know, news, media, the state of the world, like this general kind of chronic stress that so many people are walking around with. You know, what I deal with a lot of men is like they're overthinking worst case scenarios for everything. And it starts to show up in there. It starts to damage their sleep because they can't get to sleep. They don't exercise enough. They don't rest properly because they're on their phones. Like, and all of these things is creating more and more stress in their bodies that's affecting the quality and the amount of sperm that they're producing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It's a world that I think we're creating to a certain extent, right? Like you don't need to be on your phone scrolling on TikTok for hours and hours. But what they're not realizing is in the process of doing that, especially at night, that screen in your face is cutting off the production of melatonin with the blue light. If you don't make melatonin, again, that effect on the rejuvenation aspect never happens. And your cortisol dysregulates because your melatonin is dysregulated. So cortisol and melatonin kind of yin yang. And if one is out of whack, the other is automatically out of whack because they're regulating each other. So if you have too much of one, not enough of the other, and we can look at this from like Chinese medicine aspect. Cortisol is the yang or the high energy aspect, and melatonin is the yin. So what happens when you have too much yang in the body? It's like for a while you'll be good. You're like, I'm energized and I'm living off coffee and caffeine and I'm good. And all the aggression and all of that. But that amount of yang for a long period of time will eventually end in burnout. And yin is the aspect of our body that is the hormones, the fluidity, the ease, the like being able to be in the world. And the yang is the doing and creating and getting shit done. So if you're in that mode all the time and you don't have the off switch, and even when you're sleeping, your off switch is disrupted because of external forces, blue light, lack of sun during the day, being at a computer screen all day, EMFs, which we haven't even gotten to, but the phones in your pocket, the laptops on your lap, all of those are basically disrupting this ability to make melatonin. That is going to directly impact how much cortisol, how much yang there is in the body. And you go yang, 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 and eventually you get to a flat line. Like that burnout is going to happen eventually. And often for men, that burnout is seen in testosterone and sperm production. It's like the fluidity in the body is missing. So really that it's like the restoration is absolutely a necessity for all of us. And for men especially to not disregard it because it's easy. Like masculine energy is easy to be in that do mode. It's really like it is that like masculine yang is very similar. So it's easy to stay in that state, and it's really hard to like be in chill out mode without, and especially without like drugs and alcohol, right? Like a lot of men, when they're seen chilling, are usually doing some sort of stimulation to get to that state. So being able to get there on your own is really important.
Yeah. And I guess it's in the, and I work a lot with around masculinity in men, and obviously bringing in things like the masculine, the feminine, the yin and the yang, is we also live in a world where there's this hyper masculine, right? There's do. We've got hustle culture, people like, what's his name? Alex Amosi is everywhere on my Instagram. Yes. I can't get away from him, even though I don't follow him. Like there's this culture of grind harder, hustle harder, work harder. Even the phrase, sleep when you're dead. I read Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, probably maybe 10 years ago now, maybe eight years ago. And it completely changed how I felt about sleep and become quite obsessive about sleep, to be honest. Which I think has been positive. But like we live in a culture that is trying to push everyone into the yang, right? Into the yang, right? Because we live in a capitalist culture, which is produce more, make more, do more, so the economy keeps growing. And men are most seduced by this way of being because it is also traditionally the way that we value and we grade men for their contribution and production.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think we're doing the same thing to women. So
100%.
I do a lot on this like femininity stuff. So I feel like I see it in women just as hard. Like hustle culture is so big and women will burn out faster. So we don't have the capacity to stay in yang mode as long as men do. So men are going to be likely to be in that like high energy state for longer periods of time, which is why we don't see this like cortisol flatline in men's hormone levels, but women will get there faster. So the female physiology isn't designed to stay in the yang state. So even more detrimental and even faster to affect negatively our hormones, reproduction, and all of that. So women are seeing it too. It's just like there's this acceptance that we have culturally towards men being that way. Well, he's just like doing and contributing and like whatever he needs to be doing. And, you know, Hormozy talks about, oh, I sleep like 2 hours a night. Yeah. And that might be why there are some health issues. So I really think that we're culturally struggling across the board. The way that we have created our societies aren't working for us. And like on a deeper level, the struggle with reproduction is just a reflection of that. Right? Like on a deep, subtle level, it's just like, yeah, well, if this is the culture that we want to be in, reproduction is not the priority.
Yeah, it's like, as you're saying that, what it makes you think, it's like our bodies and minds, and you could even argue our spirits, are less important than our productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And we've built our society, you know, unconsciously, because, you know, we sit here and, you know, I don't feel like I've built the society, but we are contributing to it. Mm-hmm. And that our bodies and our minds and our spirits are less important than production and output. And what we're seeing in the world now, and I'm taking a larger view, is, you know, we look at mental health, for instance, right? We talk a lot about men's mental health, but women's mental health isn't that much better than men's mental health. We're looking at fertility, and men's fertility is on a nosedive, and the same with women's fertility. And we look at like people's actual bodily, physical body health, and we can see that, you know, what I read is like, you know, records number of people that are obese and people having diabetes and all these sorts of illnesses, cancer, you know, all these things. And it all comes down to, it sounds like, from what I'm getting from you and also my other information, is like this neglect of the body and the mind and the spirit as a sacrifice to the altar of productivity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like we're cogs in this machine that has to produce more, faster. And it's catching up to us is really all it is, right? Like at some point, humanity is going to have to stop and reset. And it's coming soon. It's coming really soon. So, you know, either way, we're gonna get there. But I think if we're conscious of it and if we choose different, then we have the ability to slow it down for us and the people around us. And I like part of the fertility work, I feel like what's really cool is that we see so many men with borderline diseases, diabetes, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, hyperhomocystinemia. There's like a checklist of diseases, quote unquote, that so many men are on the border of. And we catch them because we make it mandatory. Like our practice is set up to, you can't work with us unless your partner is on board, unless you're a solo mom by choice, right? Yeah. If you're doing this solo, cool, we'll support you. But if you have a partner who is not showing up, is not willing to make the changes, then you're done. We're canceling you from our program because I that much believe that the male contribution to reproduction is equally important, if not more important. And we have the ability to reverse so many of these illnesses before they become true diseases. We had a guy recently, he's 42, 43 maybe. And he is within 3 months is off the diabetes path. He was this close. I was like, give it another year, you'll have diabetes for sure. He's lost like 30 pounds that have been resistant to weight loss. His cholesterol is better. His testosterone improved 100 points in 3 months. I'm like, wow, that's incredible, right? Like across the board, check, check, check. And all he has done is adjust his lifestyle a little bit, fix what he's eating. And you did have a diet question, so we can talk about that in a second. And he's taken a couple of select supplements, and that's it. Diet, lifestyle supplements. And 3 months is all it's taken to get his blood sugar like 300 points better. His insulin has dropped, his cholesterol has dropped, like just across the board. We're like, wow. There's one thing that is not quite ticked in, which is his vitamin D. And I'm like, that's the easiest thing to fix. Great. Let's give you some vitamin D. We'll take it.
Get outside a bit more.
Yeah. So it is so possible. What's possible is amazing with just a little bit of intentionality and a little bit of willingness to make the shifts. And then equally, we see guys who don't do the work and don't see the shifts. And we're like, we've been hammering this in for 6 months, dude. What's up? You still can't eat some vegetables? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And that, it's just like, well, people will do what they want to do and what they're going to commit to doing. But yeah, the stuff, when people do the work, things change. And with diet, I think the biggest thing is just with men specifically, eat more vegetables. That's it. Like, it sounds super basic and simple, but most men are culturally motivated to eat more protein.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, oh, I get like 150 grams of protein a day. Great. Where's the fiber? I'm like, what? Do I have to eat vegetables? I don't like vegetables. I'm like, you sound like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, grow up. So really, like, I think just getting the nutrients that they need from plants is really important. For men, I think the protein is good. Most of the time, they're eating enough protein. They're getting fats from animal protein or good fats. You can add in some healthy fats like olive oil, flaxseed oil, hemp seed oil. But it's really what I feel like is missing is the plants. And if you can get more of those, it helps support digestion. It's going to help support the microbiome in the gut, which is going to help lower inflammation. It helps support methylation pathways, like the benefits of vegetables. Specifically, I would say if you had to choose, green leafy vegetables would be my priority. It's like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, all the stuff that most guys don't like.
And it's all the stuff that your personal trainer is telling you need to eat more of, basically.
Probably.
Yeah. It is. I've joined the fitness program about 6 months ago, and the meal plans, it's like one of them, quite a lot of it is just like, get stuff that's green and eat it. Like you said, spinach, broccoli, kale, put it in a stir fry and make it taste great, right? That's the simple way. And I was once a 5-year-old who was 25 years old and refused to eat any vegetables, and I've come a long way in these years. But it just makes such a difference to, like, the one thing I'll say, this is a bit of a segue. Like, for me personally, what I've really noticed is my digestion, just how food passes through me through eating green leafy vegetables and so forth. The difference it makes to energy levels and digestion for me personally has been really, really amazing. So, all right, so we know what messes up sperm. I'm going to use a very simple term there. Well, we know what messes up sperm, right? we know there's toxins and lifestyle issues and lack of sleep and so forth. And we know to help with our health and our sperm quality, we know what about diet, right? Vegetables, leafy greens, healthy fats, bit of protein, probably a bit of carbs, get the microbiome in order, stop smoking, reduce alcohol, sleep more. What else is there? What else is it that becomes really important for us to do as men to improve the kind of morphology, mobility? I love all these words. I don't know, morphology, mobility, and even the quality in general of our sperm. How can we consciously and intentionally increase the quality of our sperm?
I think the only thing that we haven't talked about is going to be things that are underlying issues. So we talked a little bit about the blood sugar, methylation, which is a big one, I think, for men. Thyroid sometimes shows up. And then the last one is gut inflammation. And we see this a lot where men that have poor sperm quality often have inflammation happening in the gut that is essentially creating inflammation throughout the body. And when the body is inflamed, which is going back to that Chinese medicine aspect, like too much yang is going to cause inflammation. And that inflammation is going to show up as like affecting the sperm quality negatively. So that's going to have an effect. And then what we didn't talk about yet also is the heat to the testicles. So the physical aspect of there's a reason why the testicles are outside of the body, right? They're supposed to be meant to stay cool. And because there are a lot of things that we're doing that are heating up the testicles and the sperm within them and is going to have a negative effect on fertility. So keeping them cool. There's a really funny book that is titled Don't Cook Your Balls. And it's always stayed with me as like, you just have to keep it cool down there. And if you're overheating, like adapt for it with ice packs. So I see a lot of these like, what is like health guys talking about, oh, you need to sauna every day. And I'm like, oh my God, shoot the fertility. Like, he's not talking about how this is going to affect fertility. Like, it could be great for detox, but probably going to have a huge negative effect on sperm.
Wow.
So if sauna is essential, like if it's necessary for you, then cooling down the testicles, and we just like take an ice pack with you into the sauna, stick it under the balls, you're good.
Got it. That's a nice one.
Yeah, sorry for the it is going to help support staying cool with things like working out. There's actually there's this men's underwear company that has a little pouch for ice pack.
I've seen a brand, sorry to jump in, I've seen a brand of boxers that basically they have a pouch for your balls to go in for you to wear to support them well, but to keep them far enough away from the body.
Yes. Yeah. So there's that. There's also a pouch that you can put an ice pack into.
Wow.
So those are cool. In general, like boxers probably better than briefs. So just keeping it cool down there. Airflow is important. And then not doing things that are going to physically impact the testicles. So things like biking, and we've had a few like marathon bikers that do these competitions and stuff. And I'm like, oh God, like the impact of years of bike riding. I don't know if I can undo that damage. So like kind of making sure that is happening. And then what a lot of this is a little controversial right now, which is something called a varicocele, which is basically the veins to the testicles that feed and support the blood flow and circulation to the testes have kind of a blockage. So the testes don't get enough blood flow, which then means the sperm are going to suffer. And usually what we'll see is that it hits the morphology the hardest. So these guys often have a morphology of 1%. Optimal is greater than 10. Normal, quote unquote, from your IVF doctor is greater than 4. So when it's down to 1%, I'm usually like, yeah, we should probably test if you have a varicocele. And the easiest way to self-check is just feel the balls. And if you feel like there's worms on top, that's a varicocele. So it feels like a bag of worms. So that's the official like description. You can feel around. If that's present, you need to go see a urologist. The debate right now is you'll go to urologists and a lot of them will say, you don't need varicocele surgery, you're fine. And you might even say back to them, well, I'm not fine because my sperm are suffering. And they'll say, yeah, this is not going to fix it. And they're more and more male urologists are opting out of varicocele surgeries. So you have to find a reproductive urologist, very specific, who can do varicocele surgeries. And there's maybe a handful around the world. So you might need to like go find one somewhere else and like fly there. It is a relatively easy surgery. It's just there's not a lot of doctors doing them. So, and if you reach out to us, we have referrals for you. So, that is one thing that is a physical thing that we can't, there's no way we're going to touch it with diet, lifestyle, and herbs. So no amount of anything that you do is going to change your sperm outcome if you have a physical block. So that's going to be important to remember. And actually like a good percentage of guys have these varicoceles. It's very common. And it's nothing you did. It's just like, it is what it is. It formed, deal with it. And the faster you deal with it, the faster the chances of getting your sperm back online. So it's worth doing. It's just, you got to find the right doctor.
Wow. That's a lot. It feels like there's so many variables, right? So many variables, but also not really, it's like health and lifestyle, diet, exercise, I imagine also becomes an important aspect of this. It's like, how are we looking after our bodies?
Yeah.
Like will really dictate the quality of our sperm, unless we got, like you said, the varicocele, unless we have something like that, which we kind of outside of our control.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it sounds complex, but in reality, like get rid of the toxins, eat good food, eat wholesome food, make sure you're eating adequate vegetables. That's like 7 servings per day of veggies. And then you're getting some sort of exercise, movement, sunlight, sleep, right? Those are like all foundations to good health. They're going to support your health overall, and they're going to support your fertility. So those are like non-negotiables. And then after that, if you've done all of those things and and I'll add to that the EMFs.
I had that. Yeah. What is the EMF?
EMF is electromagnetic frequencies, and these are basically electrical things or our gadgets, our devices that
Phones,
are giving off
laptops.
These frequencies. Computers. I was doing an assessment in our house. Essentially, all of our plugs are like giving off huge amounts of electromagnetic frequency. So I'm like, great, we got to do something about this because it's impacting the quality of sleep that we're getting. So in our bedrooms is a really big impact. And I keep telling my husband, like, we got to fix this. How are we going to fix this? And he's like, is it really that serious? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's super serious. So if we can lower the amount of electromagnetic frequency, and there is an aspect of proximity. So if it's close to your body, it's more impactful than if it's further away. So if you're working on a computer, but you have it set far from you, it's having less of an impact than right on your lap. Same with your phone. You got your phone in your pocket next to your testicles. That's going to have a huge impact versus in a backpack behind you. Ideally, that phone, I have talked to reproductive urologists that are like, just turn that thing on airplane mode unless you know you need it, to that extreme, right? Like just turn it off if you don't need it, which sounds extreme, but the reality is like we're always plugged in, and the impact of that is we can see it in male fertility. So there's the EMFs are going to affect the count the most, and then morphology. So more likely than not, that's going to be what will show up on labs. And it's an easy fix. Like, stay away from it. There's a lot of companies that say that they block EMFs with you can stick stickers on and stuff like that. Some of them work, some of them don't. So you have to do some testing to figure out, like, is this any good? But finding the resources to lower that frequency in our bodies is going to have a positive impact for fertility.
Wow. As well as sleep in general as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So whatever, like it, I know we've talked about a lot and it sounds like a lot, but these are all like, you can kind of go through these changes one at a time.
Oh.
And you're like, okay, I'm moving closer to fertility, closer, 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 closer. They're not things that you have to keep thinking about, which is amazing. For females, it's slightly more complex. We've got way more hormones to get in rhythm. But on the male side, like, you make these changes and stick with them, you're good. Like, you don't have to keep doing stuff. You don't have to keep adding stuff. Most of the time you've covered it. If after that, the sperm is still a little struggled, then you can bring in supplements in a strategic way to support what you need to support. And different things will support different factors on the male sperm side. So, yeah, you need a little bit more navigation there, but there's a whole bunch of supplements that claim all kinds of things. They're not actually doing what they claim. And there's going to be a lot of mixed results, because what I've seen, and I've been diving into this a lot, is why do some supplements work for male fertility and some don't? And what I'm finding is that all supplements right now are like, oh, they support male fertility. Well, what aspect of male fertility? Is it supporting count, motility, or morphology, or DNA frag? And you need different nutrients for each, and some of them conflict with something else. So if you're taking something for sperm count, it may actually be lowering morphology. So they're like, wait, this is not the result I wanted. And it's like, oh, well, oops. So what I'm finding is we really need to get hyper specific about what is it that you need for your body to optimize, rather than some generic formula that's kind of a catch-all for fertility, male fertility, which I think is just too general, at least from what I'm finding in the research.
Got it. So it gets really specific when it comes down to the supplements, because it's really down to which area of fertility is a challenge and what supplements are needed for, morphology or mobility, or, like you said, the DNA fragmentation.
Yeah.
One last question actually is around, I guess it's like how men receive the information that their fertility is the issue, right? Because the more I kind of learn about, and I speak to friends who are having fertility issues, ultimately, as we talked about before, we kind of grade men on their production. Can you provide? Can you protect? Can you procreate? So it's a very central aspect of the masculinity that we've kind of constructed in society. Yeah. And I guess the question is like, how do men take this information? Bearing in mind that most of the attention we often think is the woman that is the issue when it comes to fertility. And I guess the second question on top of that is like, how can we then support men when they kind of hear this information and they have to digest it?
I think it's a great question. And from my observation, it's a mixed bag. I think there's some cultural aspects to it. So I've worked with people from Eastern traditions or Eastern heritage, Indian, Chinese, that kind of thing. And they actually have a harder time accepting it than Western men, right?
Mm.
Like men brought up in the US, UK, Australia, like those guys, I feel like often take it like, oh, dang, really? Like, why didn't anybody tell me? And then most of the time, they actually are excited because now there's something that they can do, right? They're like, oh, thank God. Like something else that we could be doing? Great, let's do it. And I love it. Like, guys, most men are our biggest fans. Most of them, like, may even be hesitant to get into something that is more natural, but by the end of it, they're like, oh my God, this is the best decision I've ever made. I feel better than ever. My sex drive is insane. I feel like I'm in my 20s and my sperm are better and we're going to get pregnant. Like, there's no loss here. And they're really excited because they'll say multiple times throughout the journey that I feel like I'm finally being heard and paid attention to, and I'm no longer the sperm donor that is being ignored. And I want to be part of the journey of creating my family. Like, I don't want to be excluded in this process. So I think that most men are more that than the negative. What I think is also interesting is what we've heard from a lot of men is the most struggled part of the fertility journey for them is the time sex, which we didn't talk about. But it's basically the aspect of the woman saying, hey, I'm ovulating, time for you to perform and put out. And the guy's like, what the hell? Like, this is not I don't actually like what you're doing here. And there's like a resistance and the pressure doesn't work. Like, a lot of guys get ED in the process of fertility where they didn't have any issues before. So it's coming out of this emotional pressure, the need to please, and feeling like I'm not enough. And most men do not like feeling that feeling. So what we have found is that the fertility journey actually flips the masculine and feminine. So it puts women in the driver's seat where they shouldn't be in the driver's seat, and puts men in the passenger seat or the back seat when they shouldn't be. And part of supporting women with the feminine is, hey, how can I let go and receive? And supporting men to move back into the driver's seat by saying, hey, you lead. And they're like, what do you mean I lead? I don't know when she's ovulating. Actually, you do. If you start paying attention to the signs, and we're training them on how to pay attention to the signs. So most of our guys can read basal body temperature charts. They know when his woman is ovulating, right? Like, they are more in tune with her than sometimes she is with herself. And they're like, oh, you're going to get your period soon. Oh, you're pregnant. Like, these guys are amazing. I love men. Like, really fascinated by how much, if they're given the right support, they actually like keep blowing us away. And the ability to give that power back to the guys. And at some point we'll tell women, like, listen, you're doing this tracking, but you're not looking at the cycles. Like, you're not looking at the charts. Your partner is, and he knows what to do with it. And they're like, what? Why? I want to know. And you're like, no, just keep it off of your radar. Let him lead. And then he gets to choose when he initiates, how he initiates, and what that journey looks like. And if he's not in the mood that cycle, guess what? You're letting go and letting him be not in the mood. It's so rare. It's not going to happen. But it is really fascinating to see what happens when we can flip the masculine and feminine back into their appropriate modes, where women can just like let go of all of it, and the men are like, oh, she's about to be ovulating. What are we doing? We're going to have a romantic dinner. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. And he'll like plan a really beautiful evening for them. And who knows? Maybe that's the cycle it happens. So I think that it's really like the energetic depth of this is that men and women get to flip back into their perspective, masculine and feminine, and really tip the scale back. And like, if we have time, I have a story. This is very early in my practice, and this was before I used to see only couples. So this woman comes in, and she's a C-suite exec, like works in this high power position in the tech world. And she would like come to the office and start looking at her watch, like, okay, I got 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes. And I'm like, this is a 2-hour visit. What do you mean you have 15 minutes? And she's like, oh, I got to jet back to the other side of the city. Like, I can't be here that long. And this went on for several months. And finally, I was like, listen, like maybe we could do a video visit on the weekend. And she agreed to a Saturday. And she gets on the phone, on the Zoom call, and her entire house is white. She's walking around the house, and I'm like, holy shit, there's no color. It's all white, and it's like pristine white. Everything looks perfect. And I was like, oh, okay, I get what's happening here. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, are you a control freak? And she's like, what? And she starts crying, and she's like, oh, I've been that way my whole life. Like, what do you mean this is the issue? And like, what am I going to do about it? Because I don't feel empowered to change any of this. And I was like, okay, no worries. We got you. Find out later that her partner, who is also in the tech world, in the tech space, hasn't been able to find work in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, which is the hub of tech. Like everybody is employed in tech and he can't find a job. And he's like cooking and cleaning and doing the dishes and like really frustrated with life. He calls me 3 weeks after this session that I had with her. And he's like, hey, what did you give my wife? And I'm like, what do you mean? What happened? And I was scared. And he's like, can I just have a gallon of whatever you gave her? And I was like, what happened? And he's like, well, for one, she stopped controlling me. 2, I have a job. In 3 weeks, this man found a job after 3 years of being unemployed. He's like, I'm making more money than her. I feel like I'm the provider again. Like, she's literally like, the way he was describing it, like, stop squeezing his balls.
Yeah.
And he's like, hallelujah. Like, let's keep this woman because this is the person I want to be married to.
Wow.
And literally like a month later, they were pregnant. After 3 years of infertility, they're pregnant out of just doing the things that are going to support her to be in her feminine, him to be in his masculine, and letting go of the control and all of the stuff that she was doing. And like it is that simple sometimes, is like, hey, like, let him just do what he is meant to be doing and stop trying to control his life and micromanage and all of the things. So that's my fun story.
Wow. Wow. And I've heard a lot of stories of couples who were trying for many years, and then when they just surrender and they just like go, okay, cool, we're going to stop with the efforting and the pushing and the controlling and the monitoring and the strategizing, that they fall pregnant. I can think of, just in my own life, I can think of 4 couples that I know, one of which was one of my clients. and they fell pregnant, and when they stopped forcing it and they stopped
Yeah.
controlling each other in the way you described, like, on the clock, which I know from a lot of men that I have friends of mine and also clients, like that's one of the things, like you said. But that's incredible when they, she surrendered, she relaxed, she stopped kind of control, and he was able to kind of step into his own power. There must be like I'm sure you weren't maybe able to test it, but there must have been a hormone shift in the two of them, right? When he starts to feel better about himself, he starts to step into his power, feeling more confident. She's able to relax. She's less stressed. And then boom, little egg and sperm come together.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic. Aumatma, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I've been glued to the screen talking to you and finding out all this wonderful information. It's just so like eye-opening for me, but also just for those of you who are listening who are on the fertility journey. There's so many things here that I didn't know about, and I know that so many other men don't know about, because I know a few people who have struggled with fertility and then got pregnant, and what they've always said is they had to go through so many different tests from different people after being told everything was fine for ages, and then frustratingly told, like, oh, actually, you've got the varices, I think you talked about. A friend of mine, he got told that after going to his 5th urologist, and was like, yep, you actually need to get this done. And then they fall pregnant months later. So it's just so wonderful to have all this information, come from you about what we can actually do ourselves, the shifts and changes we can make in our lives. But I'm imagining that now that the listeners have heard all this, they wanted to understand more where they can find you and your practice, and kind of get involved with the really targeted work that I'm taking it from what I've heard, that you take couples and couples through couples only.
Yeah. They can connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, the most active, at Holistic Fertility Doctor. And then the same on TikTok, but I will not respond to you there. I do not log into TikTok. I don't know how I have a following there, but you can watch all the videos. You cannot contact me there. Or through our website, which is Holistic Fertility Institute. And then very soon, probably by the time this podcast is out, we will have what is the first ever smart fertility analysis, which is a thing that you can go and fill out, and it's going to have a male and a female version. And it's basically designed to be like the doctor in your pocket kind of thing, where we can highlight, like, here are some factors that are probably going on each of your sides that are contributing to fertility struggles. Instead of going to 12 different doctors and still not getting an answer, you got direct answers, and you can decide, like, if you want to follow the path or you want to get a consultation and do more.
Fantastic. Awesome. Massive thank you for your time this evening. It's the evening in where I am listeners, sorry. And this is the sort of episode, listeners, that you do share, because there's someone in your life, like, I'm sitting here thinking I might send this to 3 people that I know, because I imagine there's a few guys that I know that have no idea about all this information. So this is the sort of episode you share with somebody, so they can take this wisdom and knowledge and start to bring into their fertility journey, because, man, it's priceless. It's golden. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you again. And thank you to the listeners, and,
Thank you for having me, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll say thank you to everybody listening, and until next time, ciao, ciao.